welcome to a special edition of Second City Sports, our Selection Sunday breakdown, baby. Right here, live and in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I'm Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You want to know why? Because we said so. That's why. Also, too, you can catch any of our other 5 live shows throughout the week. If you happen to miss them, you can listen and watch them at your own leisure. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can also follow them on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to catch the audio version of this podcast, Second City Sports, you could do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in the search engine boxes WARR on Anchor, and you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at War Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have an upset special for us, or a question or comment regarding the NCAA tournament in our bracket breakdown segment with our very special guest, who we will introduce you to in a second, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions and comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. So, guys, this is it. Selection Sunday has taken place. We're going to break down the brackets, and for the third time in 5 years, the state of Illinois will have 2 teams representing the land of Lincoln. That's Loyola Chicago Ramblers and the Fighting Illini from downstate in Champaign. And to help us break down the chances for our teams in our state and review the brackets overall is a very special guest. He's from WGN Radio and from Barrett Sports Media. He's the professional, the one and only Mr. Andy Masur. Andy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. And this is one of those days that, again, should be a national holiday for people tomorrow, so that you can spend all this time tonight going through the brackets with your friends and your neighbors or whatever, and take tomorrow off.
We agree. Actually, we know that over the last a decade or so, I think a decade and a half, we had the first 4 games that takes place a day in every year. I know some people said that's the initial start of the tournament. BS. Thursday is the original opening day of the NCAA tournament. The first 4 days of the NCAA tournament games going on all day and all night, nonstop. This is one of the best times of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're lucky to live in the Central Time Zone, because I was living in the West Coast time zone for a while, and my first year out on the West Coast, I was getting ready to do a spring training baseball game, and we got done, and it was probably about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon Pacific time, and I looked at my engineer and I said, "Hey, let's go catch the late games somewhere." And he's like, "Late games? There's only 1 game left, and it's just tipping off in about 2 hours." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's a 2-hour time difference. I guess I'm used to being in Chicago, so I think we're lucky here because you do get it all day."
Yeah. Go ahead, Sid. Sorry.
Well, before we get down to the matchups between our 2 local teams in the NCAA tournament, Andy, I'll start with you. The Illinois Fighting Illini, they finished the regular season at 22-9. And I believe they lost to the Indiana Hoosiers, who were the last 4 teams to get in, and we'll get into the rest of the field in just a moment. But the Illinois got a 4 seed. They ended the regular season with 22 wins. Give us your assessment about the Fighting Illini this year overall.
It's such an uneven year. I mean, it was they looked unbeatable for a while, and then they looked very beatable. And the game against Indiana, make a layup. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You got Sophie Coburn, for goodness sakes, who sometimes it's like a man among children out there, and you're missing layups. Not only do they miss layups, they miss free throws. You can't do that and expect to win in the NCAA tournament. They have good enough guard play. They've got the great inside offense. You worry a little bit now about perimeter defense and also the defense inside. If Kofi Coburn gets into foul trouble, look out. I mean, they're in deep trouble. Yep. At one point I would have thought, okay, this is the number 1 seed. But I think they're very deserving of a 4 at this point. You can't make it all the way through the Big Ten tournament. They should have been the champs. I mean, they should have won the whole thing if they, again, make layups or make free throws. they get a tough draw here because not a lot of people know about Chattanooga. Just doing a little minuscule research that I was able to do before joining you guys here, they have size pretty much at every position that they bring. And they have a guy named Malachi Smith, who is probably their best player. And it's going to be an interesting little matchup to see how the Illini guards match up with the Chattanooga guards. These 4-13s kind of sometimes remind me of the 5-12s. I mean, it's not like it's a blowout in the making here, because a lot of these 13s and a lot of these 14s and 12s, they're from the non-power conferences and they never get a lot of respect. I mean, you don't know exactly the schedule that they played. You don't know the ups and downs of this team, and maybe went through some injuries, or maybe they're getting healthier now. So it's tough to scout, but at the same time, I mean, I think Illinois gotta see that they deserved.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they're also Chattanooga is also a senior laden team, so they got a lot of veteran players on that squad. So I don't think Chattanooga is gonna be afraid of Illinois. This could be one of those games where it's rare that a 13 beats a 4. I think it's only happened like 5 times, 4 or 5 times overall, but Illinois could be right there if, like you said, if Kofi Coburn doesn't step up, if Capella doesn't step up. I mean, I know those are those are some of your guys, but I feel like you said, Annie, I think Illinois, at least, especially the way they played against Indiana a couple of days ago, they got the season that they deserve. I mean, the 4 seed is more than palpable. So, do you think Chattanooga pull off the upset here?
They can. I mean, they I don't know if they will. I think that this is going to be a pretty evenly matched game, though, and I don't think the Illini have an easy road ahead of them here, facing a team like that. Who's, I actually called a game between a 4 and a 13 when the 13 won. That was when I was working for the University of San Diego back in 2007, 2008. The upset of Connecticut in Tampa.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen it happen, and if you let the 13 hang around long enough and you get the crowd behind them, because the crowd loves the underdog in these tournaments. They love the underdog, especially if they're coming in there and you get a big team like Illinois that everybody knows who they are. And there's a lot of press about them. So it's tough. I mean, you got to put these teams out of their misery early if you want to really have a chance to beat them. And you mentioned, they're senior laden. So these are the guys that they're playing. They're fighting for their college career. They don't want to go home. They want to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this, Andy, before we went on air about Cameron Crowley, who's playing overseas now, and Loyola, the job that they did against Kofi Coburn last year in their upset win over Illinois. I can see the same thing happening this year, but I think Illinois has learned that lesson. So I'll go with my next question in a different way. Of course, Trent Frazier leads the pace of the offense for the Illini from the point guard position, but in your opinion, who else should be that third guy that no one talks about? Who do you think that third person needs to step up to lead the Illini where they need to go?
Well, Williams is probably one of those guys you need to think about getting off to a good start and getting hot and getting confident. So, what's the NCAA tournament all about? It's all about guard play. It really is. I mean, you can have the big man inside, but you go back to that matchup as you were talking about with Cameron Crutwig on Kofi Coburn last year, and it was just they basically ran Kofi out of the building because Crutwig had that shot that he could take from the top of the key or just inside the in the arc from either side, and you pull the guy out of his comfort zone. So, I mean, it's on tape, and the Chattanooga guys can certainly tune in and watch that. And they can watch a couple of games this year in the Big Ten that Kofi was kind of average. This is
the Ohio State game a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
this is the guy that was thinking about going to the NBA at one point, and came back to school, which is probably the best thing he did for his career at this point. But yeah, it's going to come down to guard play, and they're going to have to shoot the three pretty well against Chattanooga. It's a fast team as well.
Let's talk about Loyola for a second. We'll get back to Illinois in a little bit. They get Ohio State 7-10 matchup. That's going to be a lot of fun. They're very evenly matched. So where do you see this particular game?
See, I didn't think Ohio State deserved that big a high of a seed, to be honest with you. I don't know that Loyola deserved that low. I mean, Loyola had a little bit of a rough patch toward the end of the regular season when they were playing Northern Iowa, and they had a loss to Drake as well. But, the Missouri Valley Conference was a pretty evenly matched in a really good conference. There was no days off, even if you were playing Evansville. Well, okay, maybe if you were playing Evansville, it was kind of like a day off because they were pretty horrible this year. But I think Loyola, we talk about experience. Lucas Williamson, the lead man on this club, has been to the NCAA tournaments 3 out of his 5 years at Loyola. You talk about a program changing kind of a person. He and Cameron Krutwig basically were the faces of that program, and now it's kind of left up to Lucas. You've got guys on that team that have experienced things before, have experienced tournament time. Ryan Schwieger, a very experienced guy that transferred in as a grad student. Chris Knight, another guy that gives you some size, also a transfer in as a grad student. Plus, I think a guy like Tate Hall could be huge. He and Tom Welch, I think those two guys could be really big. Tate Hall, if he hits that first shot, he's really confident. But he's a great lockdown type of a defender as well. And Welch kind of gives you that little X factor. I mean, he can step out and take the shot. He can also go inside. He could play a little defense as well. He had a huge block in that game against Drake in the championship game when Drake was trying to make their run back. Forget about Braden Norris. So this is a guy that's got ice water going through his veins too. He'll take that three, and it's that rainbow three, that the high arcer that comes down, and a lot of times he'll make those shots. So it's not just one guy in Lucas Williamson, because there have been times where Lucas has been a little off and they've still won games, which is good. I mean, you want to be able to have other guys on that team you can count on.
Andy Masur from WGN Radio in Chicago is joining us on a special edition of Second City Sports. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. This is our bracket breakdown special. Sid Lakeena here with you. Andy, Drew Valentine, he's in his first year at the helm at Loyola. For those folks that haven't paid attention to Loyola all year, give us his profile and what's his demeanor and what's his philosophy in leading this team.
This is a great guy. I mean, I've had a chance to call a few of their games this year on TV on the Missouri Valley Network, and I've been around him for a little while now. And this is a guy that's been through it. I mean, he was the defensive guy and the guy that drew up a really tough defense for Loyola over the last few years under Porter Moser. Porter gave him carte blanche as far as like, hey man, you run the defense. You just talk to me about subs. You talk to me about who's locked in and those kind of things. I think Drew's philosophy on offense is a little bit more run and gun than Porter's was, and I think he's kind of put his stamp on things with this Loyola program. He's only 30 years old, but the guy has a lot of coaching pedigree, shall we say. I mean, he played at Oakland. He worked under Tom Izzo for a little while, so I mean, he's got that mentality. I really think. Now, listen, if he wins a couple of games in the tournament, I don't know what there's some jobs open, and I can't say that he would take off right away, but I'm just saying. I mean, that kind of stuff happens. Now, Loyola's going into the A10 next year, so I mean that might be something he wants to stick around and maybe improve himself, improve his stock as a coach. But it's not about him, and it's not about him as far as looking at it in that respect. But I think that the familiarity that he brought, being named the coach right away after Porter Moser left for Oklahoma, I think there's a lot of trust and a lot of respect within that program for him. That these guys, it's almost routine. I mean, he's got the same kind of philosophy, with the culture and trying to build the program the right way. Now he's just trying to sustain a program that Porter really helped to build up. But again, it's about the players, and these guys buy in. They like the guy. They play hard for him, and they go to the wall for him.
Could be definitely deserve it. Do you think that I've already seen Jeff Goodman already said that his name is going to be floated around in like when the next year or two about going to a bigger job? Do you think that happens, or is he going to be one of those guys that he'll be probably the face of Loyola?
I hate to say it, but money talks, and that limelight talks as well. I mean, hey, listen, he's on the spotlight here in Chicago. Loyola has become one of the most talked about teams in college basketball in the city. I know you've got DePaul that's starting to rise a little bit. Northwestern, on the outskirts here with Big Ten play. But, Loyola has been the story the last 5 years. I mean, this is a team that's kind of won over the hearts of Chicago and Chicagoland. I mean, in 2018, if those guys were old enough, they wouldn't have had to buy a drink anywhere they went. I mean, it's just everybody loved them. Everybody jumped on that bandwagon, and they were welcoming everybody who wanted to jump on to jump right on. There was plenty of room. So it's hard to say what his mindset is at this point, but at 30 years of age, it'd be kind of tough to me, and just in my opinion, even if you have a good showing in the tournament, to make that jump right away to an unfamiliar type of a situation. This is really familiar. This is a good place to grow. They've supported the basketball program through the athletic department. The new practice facility is there and up and running. Now, again, the move to the A10, showing a little bit more of a strength in a basketball program. So I think if I'm Drew, I kind of wait and see. Of course, you listen. You have to listen. But you're here in Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities here in the city.
Before we break down the rest of the tournament field, Andy, one more question from me about Illinois. Head coach Brett Underwood, I believe this is his 5th season now. The first 2 or 3 years, the system, he didn't have the players that he needed. And over the last 2 or 3 years, he's gotten the players that he wants, and now Illinois has finally come together. Give us your assessment of Mr. Underwood from the outside looking in.
It's funny because I watched him coach at Stephen F. Austin.
Stephen F. Austin.
Getting Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin down there in Nacogdoches, Texas. I watched him coach against the San Diego team that I was covering. We had a game down there, and he was really intense. This was a guy. He was up. He was yelling. He was screaming, and he was all about defense. Back then, he was all about defense. I don't think that's changed. But I think now he's got a little more offense that he can kind of go to, where it's not so much of a, hey, we got to clamp down because we can't score 60 points. These guys can score 60 points. They can score 70 and 80 points. So I'm not so sure he's so concerned about that. But I think he's a good coach. I mean, I really think that, like you said, he's got the players that he wants in there right now. I think that it's obviously he's put his stamp on the program. It's now, this is a team, again, like we talked about, has been toward the upper echelons of the Big Ten the last few years. They get knocked off by Loyola. I really think that Brad was outcoached in that game by Porter Moser. I think the game plan that Porter put together to draw Kofi out and to put Lucas on Io, it was brilliant. I mean, it worked obviously, and Loyola moved on, and Illinois went home as a 1 seed. So, what's this? Lou Henson got the same kind of the same deal in 1989. You go back, he had the best talent on the team, but they just couldn't get over Michigan in the Final Four. You look at Bruce Weber when he went to the finals in 2005 against North Carolina. They had the better team, but it didn't work out. So you get that respect, I think, when you win the big ones. So being a co-Big Ten champion in the regular season. Okay, it's nice to put on your resume if you hang banners for that kind of stuff. I don't know if you still do those kind of things, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't do well in the tournament.
All right, let's break down the brackets here, gentlemen. Usually there's always at least one 5-12 matchup, and there's some good ones here this year, and it shouldn't disappoint. You got UConn against New Mexico State. I know we talked about them before we went on air, Andy. Another one, Houston versus UAB, an old Conference USA matchup from way back when. Iowa and Richmond. Could Richmond do what they've done before as a high seed, pulling off the upset? And St. Mary's and Wyoming, another team that Wyoming barely getting in, one of the last teams to get in. Which 5-12 kind of catches your attention, and which ones do you think can we see the upset?
I like New Mexico State over Connecticut. I don't know why. It's just something when I saw the brackets come out. I think even Seth Davis was talking about this one on the CBS television broadcast that, New Mexico State is, again, one of those teams that's playing in a WAC conference that doesn't get a whole lot of pub. Yeah, I know they lost to Chicago State, but that was then. This is now, right? That's how they kind of look at it. And the Aggies had a pretty good season. So I look at that one as one of the ones I could talk about as far as maybe seeing the old 5-12 hex. I can also see Richmond beating Iowa. I mean, I like Iowa's team. I thought they played really well during the tournament, but a 5 seed, I don't know. I think that's kind of high for them to be the 5 seed.
Yeah, I'm with you, Andy. Richmond, they upset in the Atlantic. They upset Davidson today in the Atlantic 10 championship. And I like the way that team gets after it defensively. Iowa, they did well, obviously, winning the Big Ten tournament, but I think that's a little bit of a high seed for that team. I thought they should have been like where Ohio State is, a number 7, maybe a number 8. Because Iowa struggled a little bit at the end of the regular season. I know they lost to Illinois in the last day of the regular season, but that Richmond Iowa intrigues me. I was thinking about Houston, that Houston matchup. They have UAB, but I watched Houston today. They dominated Memphis, and my guy Penny Hardaway. I know they made a run late, but Houston team, they were not going to lose to Memphis for a 3rd time this year. That just was not going to happen.
And remember, too, they lost 2 of their top scorers earlier this season. So the fact that they've been able to get this far and win the conference, I mean, that's a testament to what a job that Kelvin Sampson's done with that program.
Yeah, I agree. And Kelvin Sampson, he's kind of paid his debt to the college coaching world with all the scandals, and it was nice to see everybody kind of talking about his team rather than all of that stuff that was in his past. Last year during the tournament as well. So yeah, that's a tough team. That's one of those 5 seeds that you need to kind of look out for. I think as they move forward, I think they're going to get by UAB.
Go ahead, Lakeena.
Okay, no, I thought you probably had. Well, just to piggyback off that, do you see any other potential? 9-8s and 7-10s are pretty much even. So which one can you see like the 10, over the 7? Because I think I see maybe a couple.
Yeah, I think the 10 seed that that I'm looking for is Loyola. I mean, I think that that could be a game that Loyola could win. I think that for sure, especially coming out of that South region again. I don't really think Ohio State is all that in a bag of potato chips, if you know what I mean. So I think that Loyola could possibly get through there. This USC Miami matchup kind of intrigues me as well. USC really came out of the gate strong in the Pac-12. The best team in the Pac-12 is the number 1 seeded Arizona Wildcats. I mean, that's the team. I mean, my fiance is a UCLA grad, so we watched a little bit of that game last night. It's just like, oh boy, it was
close,
a
classic one last night.
Yeah,
that was
like,
fun
okay,
too.
Let's go to sleep. Okay, good night. This is getting a little late for me. I got to go to work in the morning. So that could be another one that could be a little bit of an upset. Miami, always known as a big physical team, could knock UCLA or USC around a little bit. So those are kind of ones to watch too. And those 6-11 matchups kind of intrigue a lot as well. And one I look at in particular is Virginia Tech and Texas Tech, or excuse me, Virginia Tech and Texas. Virginia Tech could be a team that's one to be reckoned with. They just beat Duke the other day.
Yep.
Andy Mason from WGN Radio is joining us right here on a special edition of Second City Sports in our bracket breakdown. Special Sid Lakeena here with you. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Andy, listening to the head of the committee about an hour, 45 minutes ago on CBS, Greg Gumbel asked him the question about Dayton. They were one of the first 4 teams that were out, and the head of the committee said that if Richmond, he said it without saying it, if Richmond didn't win the A-10 tournament from earlier today, Dayton would have got in. They were following them all year. And I said to myself, once Richmond won, I said, someone's going to lose out on a bid. It turned out to be Dayton.
Yeah, and it was funny because to continue that conversation that they had, Seth Davis and Clark Kellogg were kind of scratching their heads to think that even Dayton was in the picture. They didn't really feel like Dayton had the resume to really make an argument about whether or not they were in or out. Now it's interesting because with COVID kind of being on the back burner, hopefully it stays on the back burner and is not an issue during this tournament. But they've learned from the past there with teams perhaps coming down with it and not being able to play. And Dayton is the number 1 fill-in team. They're the top fill-in team. Oklahoma is second, then SMU and Texas A&M in that order. So if a team can't go, that's how they get called in that order. Interesting. I mean, and I don't know. I didn't follow Dayton all that much this year in the A-10, but listening to the guys that do and watch this team a lot, I kind of understand what they're talking about. I mean, it's hard to believe that was a better team than Oklahoma, who played in a really tough conference. And, I watched a couple of Oklahoma games just because I love watching Porter do his thing. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, when he got there, the cupboard was kind of bare, and he put together a team that was very competitive in the Big 12.
And I know, they had 15 losses, though, so that's the thing that people are kind of worried about with Oklahoma. But, they had the better schedule. So if you look at Notre Dame, especially, people were wondering, how they get in. Well, the schedule, and they beat Kentucky, so that helped them.
Yeah, it's all about strength of schedule and big wins.
Yeah, exactly. As for the play-ins, I mean, which one sort of kind of grabs your attention? And look, remember UCLA was a play-in last year, so do you think any of those 11 seeds could probably pull what UCLA did last year?
See, that was another one of those games, that went into overtime, and oh man, it was good. It was really good. The Rutgers Notre Dame game could be good. I mean, Rutgers with Ron Harper Jr. I mean, they went on a tear. I mean, they were the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament, and now they're playing to try to get in. I mean, that's what happens when you exit early from a tournament that you're supposed to at least contend in. I'm trying to think. Wright State and Bryant. I mean, Wright State from the Horizon League. that's one of those sacrificial lamb kind of games. Happy that you got there, and then next thing you know, you're packed up and you're going home. But as far as the let's see, where was the other one? Wyoming and Indiana. Now that could be a good game too. Indiana's playing well now. They weren't playing all that well during the regular season. The win against Illinois pretty much made them a 12 seed if they get through it. But Wyoming, a team that a lot of people don't know about from the Mountain West, and whoever gets out of that is going to have a hard time with St. Mary's. I'll tell you that right now, because St. Mary's is a deep team, an experienced team out of the West Coast Conference. But that's an intriguing matchup as well.
Another intriguing matchup. One of the big 9 Big Ten teams are featured. Number 7 Michigan stay out of the West bracket. They'll go up against Davidson. Tom Izzo's crew. They almost mirror the Fighting Illini. They start out strong and then they struggle in the middle of the season. Then they get it together towards the end of the season. But I watched Davidson. Of course, they lost to Richmond earlier today in the Atlantic 10 tournament title. But I think Michigan State has their hands cut out for them. I like Tyson Walker personally, but they're going to need more than him to get by Davidson, to be honest with you.
Now, look, I watched Northwestern. I did the game when Northwestern went up to Michigan State without Pete Nance and without Elijah Williams. And they won at the Breslin Center. I mean, they won by 2, 64-62. Remember it like it was yesterday. That's what I think. Tom Izzo, to be honest with you, is really frustrated by the team that he has right now. He probably wouldn't come out and say it, but you look at the way he is on the sideline and coaching when they're playing, and he's looking at the sky a lot. I mean, he's like, what the heck is going on here? What are you doing? Come on. But you know what? There's a saying, there's a few coaches you don't want to have played after they've had time to game plan for you. The Thursday, Sunday games are a little tough, but then when you get from Sunday to the next Thursday, or now in this case, from now until they play on Thursday or Friday, Coach Izzo is one of those guys you don't want to give a whole lot of time to diagram some way to try to beat you, because let's face it, you're not around as long as Tom Izzo is if you're not a good coach and you don't know how to win games. So I think that, for as much trouble as they had during the regular season, and this is a time to say, listen, the slate it's fresh. It's nothing. We don't have a record right now. Whatever the seed is, we don't care. We got to go out and we got to play and we got to win a team, beat a team, or we go home. So, I mean, there's a sense of urgency, and I think that he gets his guys ready.
There's a 7-10 matchup in the East that's really kind of like, I put it out there on Twitter earlier. Murray State and San Francisco. San Francisco going back for the first time. It seems like since '98, I think I heard. So it's been a while. Todd Golden has done a great job. His name will probably be. He's only 36 years old. His name will probably be floating around as potential, bigger coaching jobs. Murray State got rewarded for going undefeated in a very tough Ohio Valley Conference. They've got a nice backcourt as well. First to 90 wins, I think. What say you?
Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, they're the racers, and they race up and down the floor. And I think that next year they're going to the Valley. So I mean, they're Missouri Valley. That is, and so it's a chance to play up for them a little bit as well. But there are very few teams across the country that are able to go undefeated in their own conference. That's saying something about the integrity and the intestinal fortitude that this team has. I mean, it's an older team, a more experienced team. They always seem to be around tournament time, right? I mean, they're always one of those teams that you expect to see in there, like Vermont. I mean, Vermont seems like they're in there every year, right? But the same thing you can really say about Murray State. Like I said, a team that wins its conference and does not get beaten by anybody. That's a team I watch out for. I mean, again, it's a situation where they're a 7 seed, which to me is low. Just thinking about they're a 30-win team. But at the same time, they play in a conference that not a lot of the tournament committee has a lot of respect for. And it just kind of tells you that, 7, if they were in a Big Ten school and they did what they did, they'd be a 2, right? I mean, but that's just the way it falls.
Speaking of a number 2 seed, that's where the Blue Devils stand right now. And Coach K from Chicago, Mike Krzyzewski, they're in the same bracket as Gonzaga. Talk to us about the whole Coach K scenario, the storyline that's been dominating college basketball all year. How do you think this all plays out?
He was so hoping to have the ability to play in Chicago. I mean, his hometown, and now they send him out west for his final run. I talked about Tom Izzo being a guy you don't want to give any time to diagram things. You don't want to give him any time to do that either. I mean, his team at times this year played like they could win the national championship. His team also played at times this year that they didn't belong in the bracket at all. So, what are they gonna be? I think they're gonna be the team that can win the national championship just because of the whole saga and the storyline. These guys don't want to be the last ones to have Krzyzewski leave the tournament, having to shake hands and go home, right? I mean, you want this guy to win. I mean, obviously, if you're playing for him, the road that they gave him though, not very good. I mean, it's a tougher road, I think, than a lot of the number 2 seeds have in this tournament. I mean, you've got Gonzaga up there. You've got teams like Arkansas and Alabama and Texas Tech, and of course Michigan State, even Davidson. I mean, if they're able to get through that, so it's a rough road here. But you don't put too much behind with Coach K. I look at him as one of those guys that I think he realized it was time to hang it up, but at the same time, I don't think he's ready to go yet.
Michigan is probably gonna be one of the talking points when to continue with the breakdowns. They get in, they didn't even get to the playing game, so they were already well in. They play Colorado State. Do you see Juwan Howard, back from his suspension? Do you see them probably using this as motivation? Because I'm sure you're gonna hear folks say, well, they don't belong in and blah blah blah.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say they don't belong in, and I think the blah 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 might be accurate. I mean, it's just it's a tough scenario. I mean, the Big Ten, give it credit, it was a real rough conference this year. I mean, there was a lot of competition, a lot of very good teams. I mean, you look at Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers could probably win a lot of other conferences if they weren't in the elite area here with 9 teams. I had to write this down because I thought I was hallucinating when 9 Big Ten teams got in. Now, again, they're going to have to prove that they are worthy of the 9 teams, because in the recent past they haven't been worthy of a lot of bids because they haven't performed very well. But back to the original question about Michigan, this is an up and down team too. I mean, you don't know what Michigan team you're going to get. You don't know what Juwan Howard you're going to get. I mean, things that irritate him. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, it'd be hard for me to think that they're going to go very deep in this tournament. And hopefully you're not going to replay this tape when they do.
We're halfway home with our NCAA tournament special right here on Second City Sports. We're live in the 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you. Andy Masur from WGN Radio in Chicago is our special guest breaking down the brackets. Let's stay with the Big Ten, Andy, and go to the East bracket. The number 3 seeded Purdue Boilermakers, they were playing like a Final Four team earlier in the season. They struggled late. They lost to Iowa in the Big Ten title game earlier today. What chances do you give them to reach the Final Four? It looks like the only competition from just glancing at the bracket, you have Texas, you have Virginia Tech, but they can possibly meet up with Kentucky in the Elite 8 game.
Yeah, I don't envy that. Kentucky is one of those silent but deadly kind of teams that could make some noise in New Orleans this year. I mean, they're good. I mean, that's a good team. But Purdue. Here's the thing about the Big Ten. It's such a physical conference. I mean, it's not one of those. It's not the Pac-12 where it's run and gun. It's not the SEC where there's some beef there, but you're still talking about defense and mid-range and 3-point shooting. The Big Ten's a physical conference, and I really think that the physicality takes its toll on a lot of these teams that are good at the beginning. I mean, finally you get worn down. It looked like a worn down team, to be honest with you, today, Purdue. But again, I think they've got a lot. If you have Jaden Ivey on your team, you got a chance. Let's put it that way. I mean, this kid he's unbelievable. He's a tremendous talent. But we've seen over the course of the years with the Big Ten that not faring very well early on. I really think it's just because of how physical this conference is. I mean, there's some teams that don't play the beefy game, but there's a lot of the teams that do.
Any potential Cinderellas you see? Besides Gonzaga and St. Mary's and those guys.
Yeah.
Even Murray State. I'll put Murray State out there as well.
Yeah, I get you on that. I mean, I'm just looking at it, obviously, for right along with you guys here for the first time, and really haven't had a chance to really digest things. I'm gonna look here real quick and see if there's one other interesting team, to kind of keep an eye on. LSU, they fired their coach. This is a team that is in the tournament as a number 6 seed playing Iowa State in the Midwest, and they fired their coach. I mean, okay, what happens now? I mean, what happens to these players? Are their heads spinning? Are they kind of determined to say, okay, well, throw something at us, and we're going to be able to come to get over it and be able to succeed on our own here, or with a new guy coming in. Murray State's the team we talked about earlier that I think has a chance to make a little noise. They're a 7 seed, so I don't know how much of an upset, that kind of a situation is. I never count out Loyola. I mean, it's hard to count them out. I mean, just watching the way that they play, they're smart and they're deep. They might not be as good as they were last year, but they have different strengths this year than they did last. I think they have a little size and a little more. I don't know, bravado, I guess you could say. They've got some guys that have been through the wars before in the Ivy League, and they're smart players, and Knight and Schwieger. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works out, especially in the first game. If they get by the first game, it's not enviable to face Villanova, but anything can happen in that kind of a situation once you get by the first round. So just kind of at first glance, looking at that, I would say those are a couple teams. Boise State is a team I liked in that first round over Memphis, but Gonzaga, I think Gonzaga, all the pressure's on them again this year. And I will go on record right now. In my bracket, I'm not picking them to win because they always disappoint me when I do.
Mic drop.
That's true.
Let's go to the Midwest bracket. Another number 3 seed team in the Big Ten is the Wisconsin Badgers. I believe they're playing at home too. At least the first.
Get me started.
We were talking about it before the show. Wisconsin, they're playing at home for at least through the first couple of rounds in the city of Milwaukee. They had a tough start to start the season. I know Lakeena likes Johnny Davis, one of their main stars, but they got it together at the end of the regular season. Talk to us about Wisconsin. Do you give them a realistic shot of making a deep run?
I don't, but that's just because I'm not a big fan, and I'll be honest with you, not a big fan of Wisconsin. But I have a hard time understanding why they got the royal treatment out of anybody. I mean, this is a 3 seed that's playing at home, and if they're lucky enough to advance, they play in Chicago. Oh my God, it's a long trip. We better pack a lunch. I mean, come on. I mean, what did they do that was so special that they were getting the treatment that Duke couldn't get? You got a legendary coach who's from Chicago who wanted a chance to play, have his team play in Chicago, and he's sent out west, and Wisconsin, for whatever reason, gets to stay in the Midwest, and they basically are playing at home. I don't get it. I just don't understand it.
Well, they got a tough matchup against Colgate. And then Colgate, very similar to some of the other teams we talked about from the double-digit seeds. Very senior laden. This is their 3rd trip in the last 5 years. So I don't think I'm not going to say that, Colgate's going to upset Wisconsin, but I feel like maybe they could give Wisconsin a tough time.
I'm saying go toothpaste. Go toothpaste. Give me some Colgate. Give me some Colgate.
Go toothpaste. 14s and 13-4s, I should say, is another one that we talked about earlier. Providence and South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. Do you see, let's say, the Friars can pull some, out of their, what's again? Do you think that they can upset? The Jackrabbits could upset the Friars.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that matchup for South Dakota State. I don't like that at all. I just think that there's only so many times I think you can be a Cinderella, before people don't take you as a Cinderella anymore. They don't take you lightly because you've got a proven track record. They said that about Loyola the last year as well. Okay, well, this is a team that went to the Final Four. It was a magical run. They can't do this again. Well, they get to the Sweet 16 and, they just fell flat against Oregon State. I mean, that was one of the worst games that I've seen them play in a while. Just, nothing was falling for Lucas Williamson. It was a rough, as much as was falling against Illinois that day. He used up all his bullets, I guess, in that game. And it was unfortunate, but you get that reputation of being one of those bracket type busting teams. And next thing you know, they're not taking you very lightly, no matter what number seed you are, because they know that you can win. So I just don't know if they have that magic still.
Heading down the home stretch with our very special guest, Mr. Andy Masur from WGN Radio, right here on Second City Sports, the special edition in our Break Breakdown. I'm Sid, it's Lakeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago. Let's stay in the Midwest region, Andy. Speaking of another former Illini head coach, Bill Self, he has his team in position again. They're the number 1 seed in the Midwest bracket. It looks like from the outside looking at this bracket, they have a pretty easy road to the Final Four. I'm using easy air quotes for those listening back on the playback on our podcast version. He shouldn't have too much trouble unless injuries decide to get in the way.
Yeah, Kansas is one of those teams too that I always pick and they never come through for me. I mean, there's always that one little lull or one little lapse. So I'm going to go on record again saying I'm not picking Kansas because they always disappoint me. Sorry, Bill Self, but that's the truth. But I think they have an easier road, at least in that part of the bracket that they're in before you get to the Elite Eight. I mean, realistically, it would be Kansas, probably San Diego State to me, Richmond, I think, and then Providence. So, I mean, you're kind of thinning things out a little bit at that point as well. So I think that they're probably equipped at least to get to that position of the Elite Eight. Now, when you get to that other part of the bracket, there's a lot of question marks to me. I mentioned LSU already. I mean, with the head coaching situation. Wisconsin, I think, is overseeded. USC had a great start to the year and kind of hanging on. Miami, one of those teams, still from a good conference. Auburn, they were the number 1 team in the land for a while, and now they're the number 2 seed going in. So it's a lot of scratching the head when you're putting the brackets together and trying to figure out who's going to win this whole thing. But yeah, I think Kansas has a pretty decent run toward the Elite Eight at least. I'm not sure I would say Final Four for sure at this point, but I'm looking at some of these teams too. I mean, Gonzaga is the number 1 overall seed, and again has a tough matchup probably in its second game. And even looking further ahead, Arkansas is a team coached by Eric Musselman, who was with Nevada when Loyola went on that run to the Elite Eight and then the Final Four. So there's a lot of experience in that respect too, and that's a physical conference as well. And Gonzaga is not used to playing that kind of a style. So at this point, it's cliche to say that there's a lot of parity in college basketball these days because I really think there is, because there's a lot of these upper echelon schools that you've got a couple players that come in and they're like, all right, cool, I'm done after 2 years. Bye-bye. And then you got teams like Davidson and, and Toothpaste and Loyola that have their teams stay together for 4 and now even 5 years with the COVID year. So there's something to be said for those teams that are together and have gone through a lot of things, whether they be good or bad or indifferent. It's hard to not pick those teams and to see those teams succeed because, they're relatively unknown to the casual observer, and I guarantee you they're not unknown to the teams that are playing them and coaching them against them. But there's always that upset that we see as an upset. But I'll tell you, a lot of those coaches will say, "Hey, this is a team that could be X in our conference if we played them 2 times every year. We'd be lucky to split with them." So, when you look at these brackets, and there's pressure on me, because you're a sports guy, you're supposed to know what the heck you're talking about, right?
Right.
And, I spend so much time looking at these things, going, okay, I go back and forth. I'm like, just you have a better chance, I think, of looking at it and going, "Yep, first choice, boom, 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 boom," going right through it. You probably have a better chance of winning your pool than you do if you sit there and spend all the time on it.
What's the toughest region you think? If looking at these brackets now, which region is very tough? For me, I think it's the West is pretty tough. I think maybe the Midwest might be a little bit tough as well. So, what regions do you think are probably the toughest? Yeah, the West is tough. I think their top 2 seeds are 2 of the best 2 teams in the country. With Gonzaga and with Duke. And again, Gonzaga with all this, this baggage and pressure. I mean, they just can continue to reload. I watched them play earlier this year. My fiance and I were in Nevada. We were at Las Vegas to watch that game of number 1, number 2. It was UCLA and Gonzaga at that time, and another one of those things that another one of those games that we left early. Don't tell anybody, but it was getting and traffic was a nightmare getting in. So we just like, let's get out of here. This doesn't look very good. Plus, we had some jerk sitting behind us who was a UCLA fan. He was whining the entire game about the officiating, and it just drove me crazy. I was ready to spin and seriously. So we got out of there for self-preservation as well. But, my point is that Gonzaga is always up there now. And it's one of these, Mark Few has built something so special up there.
he's had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to leave. But why leave when you're the king of where you are and you're making money? You're making a lot of money for living in Spokane, for goodness sakes. And you continue to get that pipeline of teams, of players to come to, to greet you. And then they want to play for Gonzaga. They want to play for the Zags. So, yeah. Okay. I'm looking at the West. Yeah, that's a tough region. I think the West is tough. I think the South could be a tough region too. Houston is one of those teams not to really overlook. Tennessee. There was a lot of talk about Tennessee being a 2 and maybe early in the year, maybe even having a chance to be a 1 seed. Villanova, Jay Wright is a veteran and has won the national championship a couple of times as well. So that's a tough bracket as well. It's so hard to just kind of look at numbers on a page right now and look at teams on a page without really having to, going in and tremendously in depth on some of these rosters that you don't get to see the teams play often. But, just at first glance, I think that those are 2 tough ones. West and South could be pretty tough.
And staying with the East region for me one more time, Andy. The 8-9 matchup is always an equalizer matchup. We have North Carolina, Hubert Davis. Scottie Pippen did not foul him from back in the day.
No, he didn't. Hugh Hollins. I'll never forgive you for that.
There we go.
Same here. But North Carolina will play Shaka Smart's Marquette Golden Eagles. But talk to us about Shaka Smart. I believe this will be his third team, third different team, leading a third different team to the NCAA tournament. This game, not too many people are talking about. This could be a classic one for sure.
It was a VCU, Texas, and now Marquette. Is that? I think
yes.
those are the 3 teams that Shaka Smart has gone to. And there's been teams that there are people that have called him Shaka not very smart sometimes, but Marquette again in another tough league, but so is North Carolina, and North Carolina just absolutely handed it to Duke that night on Coach K night in Chapel Hill. Was it Chapel? No, it was in they played at
Durham.
Duke. They played at Durham. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was they really they got out and handed it to them. So obviously with a team that's an 8 seed and a 9 seed, they're so evenly matched. It's just it's a flip a coin kind of thing. It's all about the start. To me in these games, because you get out to a decent start and the other team's going to make a run at you, but you've got the lead and you hope that the team that's trying to come back at you exerts a lot of the energy that they spent coming back and not being able to get up and over that hump at this point. But if I was to pick that particular game, I would pick North Carolina. I think North Carolina has a better chance in that game than Marquette. And again, burn the tape if I'm wrong.
No problem.
All right, Andy. Okay, we're not going to hold you to this, so you can change if you want. Who is your Final Four as of right now, March 13th, 6:49 Central Time?
I have a hard time picking against Arizona winning the whole thing this year. I just think that they're the best team in the country right now. I think I watched them play last night. I've watched them play on a couple of different occasions this year. They don't seem to have too many weaknesses. I see them coming out of the South. I don't think easily, but I think they're gonna come out of the South. Man, you don't like to pick chalk because you know that the number ones never all get there at the same time. I'm a big fan of UCLA for different reasons, of course, maybe more with my heart than. But I think Kentucky comes out of the East. I think Kentucky will be a Final Four team this year. Again, if I have to look real quickly here at the West. Boy, I'll be really upset if Gonzaga does not make it out of that bracket, just because I think that they're maybe the second best team in the country right now, behind Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I left out one. I left out the Midwest, right?
Yes.
I'm looking at the Midwest here real quick. Man, that's a tough one too. I mean, Kansas has all the talent, but they never really seem to put it all together to get there. Auburn, again, one of those teams that I have a hard time rooting for because of Bruce Pearl. I'm just not a big fan. I just don't like the.
You're not the only one.
Yeah,
in the late Les Scott scene as well. But
I know. I know. Les really loved Bruce, especially from his days as an Iowa assistant with the Deion Thomas situation and all that kind of stuff. Forget about it. I watched Pearl coach at Milwaukee when I was doing Loyola games on a regular basis. This is such a self promoter. Yeah, I'm over it. I'm over it. I'd like to see Jackson State beat him in the first round just to get him out of there. Again, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at 1s and a 2. How about Kansas, Arizona, Gonzaga, and Kentucky? I think Arizona wins it all.
All right.
Right here at this particular point in time.
All right. If Arizona doesn't win, we'll just burn this part of the tape, but we'll keep the rest of the interview.
We'll just do the whole thing. Delete the whole tape.
Just delete it. Just put up like a technical difficulties kind of thing, and I think people understand.
Well, on that note. All right, that was Andy Masur, sports anchor and reporter for WGN Radio in Chicago. He's kind enough to give us much of his time here on Second City Sports, the special edition, the bracket breakdown right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sir, thank you very much for joining us here today. Great job. Enjoy the tournament, and we'll try to get you on our daily show and talk some more sports.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds good to me. Anytime, guys.
All right, thank you very much.
You guys stay safe.
Appreciate it.
All right, that's Andy Masur from WGN Radio. Now, Sid, the weird thing about all this whole aspect of it, I know this is supposed to be a breakdown special, but a couple of NFL notes have come out of nowhere, and there's a certain quarterback that played in Tampa the last couple of years decided to post on his social media that he's coming back. And I'm talking about Tom Brady. He made the announcement about a half hour, like about 45 minutes ago. This is where we were talking to Andy that he's coming back. Really? Really, Tom? You couldn't wait until tomorrow? Come on, really? Really?
Oh boy. Like I said, on our daily show, I'll have more to say about that. And I saw that on my phone as we were interviewing Andy. Like I said, we'll get into it on our Monday edition of Second City Sports. The NFL, like you said, never seems to disappoint us with the news. So like I said, we'll get into it on our next show. But back to the tournament. Lakeena, focusing on our local teams first, the Illinois-Chattanooga game. As Andy said, I don't know much about Chattanooga, but from what Clark and Seth said on the CBS telecast, it could be tough. Andy said it too. It could be tough, but I think Illinois, they're going to pull through. Like I said, Kofi Coburn has to stay out of foul trouble. Jacob Granderson, Trent Frazier, and my guy Alfonso Plummer, all of them have to step up. Like I said, Damone Williams, the same thing with his defense and his size. If he can defend well, especially against their top scorers, I think Illinois would be okay. But just looking at their bracket in the South, they could potentially meet UAB or Houston in that second round before they reach the Sweet 16 in a potential matchup with Arizona.
Yeah, they're the tough part of that bracket for sure. Illinois is like I told Andy said earlier. Chattanooga's a senior laden team, so they can't afford to have days off. So they need to jump on them early, because if not, you let them hang around. The Mocs can perhaps maybe pull off a big upset. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't want Illini fans coming at me, but it could happen. So look, Illinois is a very tough part. Their second round game is going to be pretty tough too. Either one, Houston. Especially if they get out of that game against UAB, they could definitely be, that thorn in Illinois' side. So we'll see.
And also, too, the Loyola Ramblers of Chicago in that same region, they'll play on the same day as the final line. They'll face the number 7 ranked team in that bracket, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm kind of with Andy. They were ranked a little bit high. How can a 17 with 19 wins rank number 7? That's just me. That kind of a team is like for an 8-9 matchup or this 7-10 matchup. They should have been the 10th ranked team and Loyola 7th. Remember, Loyola won the conference tournament to get it, and plus they have more wins. But when you play in a smaller conference, you get punished, I guess. But I think Seth Davis brought up a great point last week, and we talked about it on our daily show about Cameron Cartwright, who's playing overseas. They could use Loyola could use him right about now. Of course, E.J. Liddell is a beast, as the kids would say for Ohio State. I think he's going to be the difference there. I think Loyola will play tough and pressure you defensively for 48 minutes. But the key here is, how will Drew Valentine, the head coach of Loyola, what will his game plan be defending Mr. Liddell?
Yeah, in Ohio State, they have some injury issues. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but hopefully they'll be back, by, I think they play Friday. So, yes. And also, too, the good news is that, Loyola and Illinois are both playing in Pittsburgh. So, yes. Hey, look, if you guys have your friends who are, Illini grads, Loyola grads, have a, take a, plan a little trip to Pittsburgh, and people say Pittsburgh's pretty walkable. So, I don't know where they're playing at, the arena they're playing in, but
I believe it's the arena where the Pittsburgh Penguins play. I think it's the PPG Pants Arena. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, 'cause I think Pittsburgh's I think the Penguins are on a road trip, so that's probably you might be right about that. But yeah, that should be a fun little trip, for anybody who go to from here in Illinois. That sounds like pretty fun. But yeah, going back to the Ohio State matchup, and Loyola. I mean, look, this is another one of those evenly matched, a 7-10 matchup. So you could probably flip a coin, and you probably be right on who wins. If EJ Liddell can jump on that defense early, but you got other guys there that can open up as well for Ohio State. So yes, you could, double team, Liddell all you want, but they've got other guys that can step up to the Buckeyes. So, Drew Valentine's got a lot to plan here.
You're listening to Second City Sports, a special edition. We're laughing in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago in our bracket breakdown special. We have a few minutes left in the show. See Lakeena here with you. Lakeena, any more matchups? I'll give you a couple from my end, but any more matchups that jumps out at you in this any of the four regions?
The West region is very interesting. The 8-9 matchup between Boise State and Memphis.
I'm cheering for Memphis. Penny Hardaway. I know they took it on the chin today in the AAC title game, but that team is very good, and they need to get a couple of stars healthy, and stay out of foul trouble. But I like that Memphis team. Penny Hardaway is starting to figure it out there. They're good. They're still a good team, but they just need to get a little bit tougher. Of course, playing the Houston Cougars doesn't get any better than that in that conference. But I'm cheering for Penny Hardaway.
Yeah, Boise State can shoot the three, so they can have like a couple of big guys on the inside too. So that might be a tough matchup for them. Another 8-9, Seton Hall and TCU. That should be an interesting one there. Two very evenly matched teams. Very similar styles of offense as well. So that could be another first 70 or 80. Can probably win that as well. We talked about North Carolina and Marquette with Andy earlier. San Diego State and Creighton, they both got big guys up front. So that's going to be an interesting matchup there as well.
I think Creighton can pull that off.
They can. And look, this isn't San Diego State's first rodeo either. So they won't be afraid by, the big team in the Big East. What other matchups kind of have you intrigued?
Going back to one of the first matchups we discussed with Andy, I asked him the question from the West region. The 7-10 matchup, Michigan State and Davidson. As I said to Andy, Tyson Walker, you know how much I like him, but he's going to need some help. Davidson, you saw how they beat, how even though they lost to Richmond earlier today, you see how well they play defense. And I know that Richmond got after them earlier today, but Tom Izzo's crew, they struggled to score at times. If it wasn't for Tyson Walker, and I don't know where they're going to get their offense from. The Atlantic 10 is a very underrated conference, and Michigan State has their hands cut out for them.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. If Davidson hits their threes, they're going to be tough to beat. So Michigan State better watch out for that. The other 7-10 in the Midwest, you got USC and Miami. We talked about that with Andy.
I kind of like with Miami. I kind of like Miami to upset there.
Yeah,
I know they're picked to finish almost dead last in that conference, but
12th,
they finished fourth in the ACC. So even though Miami is known as a football school, that basketball program hasn't been too bad. I know Loyola beat them on the way to the Final Four in the first round a few years ago, but they don't have too bad of a basketball program.
No, they don't. The Jim Larinaga, who they just signed to a new 3-year extension, so he's going to be back, and they got a nice recruiting class coming in. Charlie Moore, remember from DePaul, he's down there, one of the leaders of that team. I feel like he's been there forever too. It feels like so that should be an interesting one. I could tell by Andy's tone he's not a big Wisconsin guy. So, but look, Colgate, they got a pretty veteran squad. So I'm not saying that they'll beat Wisconsin, but Wisconsin better watch out, because if Johnny Davis has an off nights, that's that. Colgate can take advantage.
Yep, and that's what happens usually at this time of year in the NCAA tournament. The 6-11 matchup in the East Texas versus Va Tech. I think Va Tech can pull off the upset there. I'm looking at going back to the Midwest bracket. Where was that matchup I wanted to see? Actually, let's see. This is live, folks, so bear with us. Okay. The Midwest bracket, number 11, Iowa State versus number 6, LSU.
Oh, yeah.
I think that off the field problem with their head coach now being dismissed because of a violation that's been brought up. I think that's going to, even though they have a few days to practice and try to, quote unquote, get it out of their system, I think that's going to affect them some way. I won't be surprised if Iowa State pulls out the upset there.
Yeah, Iowa State looked really good earlier this year. I think they've grown from the experience. They made it to the semis of the quarters of the Big 12. So that might be another intriguing one to watch out for. I think we'll go a couple more minutes here. That Iowa Richmond, I saw a little bit of Richmond. I saw them a couple of times, including just a few hours ago when they upset Davidson. Their defense is really good.
Yes.
So if Keegan Murray and Jordan Bohannon and some of those guys, especially if Iowa can play defense as well, but their style of defense is definitely like they're more smothering the spiders. They're nicknamed the Spiders, so go with that. Go with that nickname there. So I'm not saying that I'm not gonna say that Richmond can't are they gonna beat them, but
that's one of my upsets.
Yeah, 5-12. That could be one of those 12-5 matchups that we may see a 12 over a 5.
Two of those upsets come for the 5-12 matchups. I don't have the official numbers in front of me, but we usually have at least 1-12 upset in the 5 every year. Sometimes twice in some years.
Yeah, so UConn and New Mexico State. I know, New Mexico State. This isn't their first rodeo either, so they're not going to be afraid of UConn. They play a very similar style as well. Whoever wins the Indiana Wyoming. I know, St. Mary's. They're one of those teams where they might get hot, they might not. So that could be another 12 versus 5 matchup that that might be look out for as well. So there are a lot of good ones here. Again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but yeah, there should be a really good tournament. Look, we can talk about the CDs and whatnot till the cows come home, but it is what it is. So you say Michigan shouldn't have gotten in, who knows, but they probably shouldn't have, but again. Look, like I said, the Notre Dame, the Notre Dame. Who are they playing? Oh crap, I forgot who I got. I don't have it in front of me either. I just had it in there. They're playing.
They're playing Rutgers.
Rutgers. So that should be a fun one. We talked about that too with Andy. So that should be a good one coming up on I don't know if that's gonna be Tuesday or Wednesday, but yeah, there's should be some good ones here. Look, I think there's not like one or two favorites like it was last year. I think Baylor probably has like the hardest.
The committee really punished them this year.
Yeah, they really hey, look, here you go. Here's North Carolina. Here's Marquette. Here's UCLA. Here's
Kentucky.
Here's Kentucky and Purdue. And look, Purdue, look, I said it earlier. Look, just when I thought Purdue, I could probably put them in the Final Four. They do something, they don't play very well against Iowa, and now I'm not believing in them again. So I don't know. We're not going to do our Final Fours yet. We're going to do our Final Fours tomorrow. So you guys got to tune in at noon for that. So, okay. So, we'll talk more, break down the matchups more once we kind of start getting into like the nitty gritty of it. But on that note, Sid, take us out.
All right, just a reminder for you guys, the Final Four will take place in the weekend of April 2nd and April 4th from New Orleans. Final Four Saturday is Saturday, April 2nd. The national championship game will be on April 4th from New Orleans. Both games this year, the Final Four will be on TBS this year. Not CBS, but TBS, that's on cable for you simple folks at home. Of course, the first 4 games from Dayton will start on Tuesday and Wednesday. And of course, the big tournament will start on Thursday on the networks of CBS, TNT, TBS, and yes, True TV. Now I had to go find my remote to find where True TV is, or you can download that March Madness app from the NCAA. You don't have to worry about True TV. And so,
well, they make that joke every year. You gotta look to see like, oh wait, where's True TV at? Oh, okay, it's right here. So okay. But yeah, so you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You can catch this show or any of our other 5 live shows throughout the week. You can follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can download our podcast at War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms. And you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And make sure you catch Second City Sports, our daily show, every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as you kids would say. You can catch Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, so for Sid, I'm Lakeena. This is Second City Sports our special bracket breakdown edition from the men's NCAA tournament, and we'll be right back tomorrow at noon Central Standard Time for our regular show, Second City Sports. So make sure you guys tune us in and enjoy the tournament, everybody.
Go Illini, just us. Holla!